Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla Apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome to the Roger Stone Show. I'm Roger Stone, and you're at 77 WABC, the hottest AM radio station in America. In politics, what a difference a day makes. For 3 years, I have predicted that Joe Biden would not be the nominee of the Democratic Party, and I went so far as to predict a prediction I stick to, that Michelle Obama will. Listen to this.
Now, as a veteran of many years in American politics, I'm going to tell you something somewhat shocking. Joe Biden will not be the nominee of the Democratic Party in 2024. Kamala Harris will briefly become president, but the only way in their party they can replace a woman of color is with another woman of color. And yes, you heard it here first. The Democratic nominee for president will be Michelle Obama. They have already rigged their primaries. The reason that they have canceled the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary is to put South Carolina, a state where a majority of the Democratic primaries or primary voters are African Americans, and they will allow Gavin Newsom to purchase the vice presidential nomination, but the Obamas will hold him up for $600 or $800 million to do so. You heard it here first. When Steve Bannon says it in 3 weeks, remember I said it first.
Well, we shall see about that prediction. The part in the beginning, Joe Biden will not be the nominee. I think that is looking to be more and more likely. I mean, after Donald Trump's pitch-perfect debate, which he absolutely demolished Joe Biden, but more importantly, Biden's virtual meltdown on the stage, the Democratic media cabal went into high gear in terms of the immediate calls for Joe to step aside. When the New York Times, which is the mouthpiece of the Democrat liberal fake news cabal, says that Joe has to go, it's a serious matter. First of all, the Democrats have to admit that they've been lying to us. All these folks who kept telling us that the videos of him were cheap fakes and that he was hale and hearty and fit and what a tough leader he was behind the scenes, they either knew and they were lying to us or they had been lied to. The big feat of the Democratic media cabal, like the Philadelphia Inquirer, the New York Times, many others, Politico, correctly identify a panic in the Democratic Party. Now, as for the part about Michelle emerging early, I was wrong about that. And if I ever said that I thought she would seek the presidency or run for president, then I would have misspoke. What I always thought was, if they can get Joe to go, and they go to an open convention, she would be the overwhelming favorite. I don't think she wants to run for president, or people I know who know her tell us she has no interest. But the question is, could she be persuaded if she were told that she had the best chance of saving the country from the return of Donald Trump. Now, President Obama, Bill Clinton, both immediately put out statements of support for Joe Biden, but that, of course, doesn't tell you what they are doing behind the scenes. I don't think it is inconceivable that the panic is so great and that there is such fear of going into a general election that Barack Obama could very easily privately go to Joe Biden, having lined up a majority of the cabinet members and, of course, the person who would benefit the most, Kamala Harris, and give Joe an ultimatum that if he does not agree to step down as the nominee, which is really the only way you can now replace him, but fill out his term as president, that they will have to remove him under the 25th Amendment. That would be real hardball. It's interesting, during the debate, I saw Joe Biden accuse Donald Trump of having an affair with a porn star, seemingly oblivious to the fact that Joe Biden was having an affair with the babysitter before his first wife was tragically killed in a car accident. And now that babysitter is the de facto president of the United States. This is not the first time we've seen this in history. Woodrow Wilson, our 28th president, began his presidential term in 1913, having won a three-way race in which Theodore Roosevelt, running on the Bull Moose Party, ran second, and incumbent President William Howard Taft ran third, and he left office in 1921. He had a series of strokes in October 1919, which left him completely physically and mentally incapacitated. His wife, Edith Galt Wilson, controlled the president, and she made all significant decisions. Of course, he was shielded from the public, something you could not do today. Her co-presidency was managed by a fellow by the name of Colonel House. Colonel House was the White House chief of staff, and he was essentially assisting the First Lady in the cover-up. This is precisely what you have going on now. Anyone who sees the look on Joe Biden's face while his wife speaks at the day after rally, there is no one home. And I suggest to you that Jill Biden's work husband, as she calls him, staffer Anthony Bernal, plays the role of Colonel House. Mrs. Wilson would actually put the pen in the president's hand and move it across the paper in order to sign important government documents. But make no mistake, Joe is extraordinarily stubborn when he's not comatose, and Jill, backed by Vice President Kamala Harris, will most definitely dig in their heels. The one thing the Democrats, or I should say the Bidens, can't possibly give up is the ability for Joe to pardon himself, his brother, his son, and other members of the Biden crime family, perhaps even himself. Because we know that subpoenaed bank records show that over $18 million from foreign nations, including Ukraine, China, Russia, Romania, Panama, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Syria, flowed to not only the president, but more precisely to his family. Remember what he told us in the first debate, that not a single penny had gone to any member from a foreign country of his family? So I think there's internecine warfare going on in the Democratic Party. As for Donald Trump, who I've known for 45 years, he was cool and collected, funny, presidential, didn't take the bait when Biden attempted to bait him several times, made the case for why everyone was better off than they were today, better off 4 years ago than they are today, pointed out Joe's utter failure on the border and with the economy. Later in the show, Barry Habib, probably the country's leading housing and mortgage expert and a shrewd political analyst, joins us to pull that apart. He called out the weaponization of the justice system, but first and foremost, he let Joe speak, and Joe made a complete fool of himself. The immediate Democrat talking points, of course, were out, which is, well, Joe may be out to lunch, but Trump is a liar. Look at how many lies Trump told. This is Alinskyism writ large. Let's go through it. Joe Biden said that he recycled the fact that Trump, standing over the graves of people who died in service to this country in France, called them suckers and losers. There were 20 people present. 19 of them say it never happened. The one guy that did say that happened, who I think manufactured that quote, was was fired by President Trump, and he said it after his firing. Hitler did good things. Trump never said anything of the kind. The people in Charlottesville, many fine people. That has been completely debunked, most recently by Snopes, which no one would call a right of center fact checker. The fact that Biden would even recycle that is outrageous. Biden said he capped insulin at $15. It was Donald Trump who capped insulin. He said he capped Medicaid drug expenses at $200. False. He said that Trump said he would be a dictator. Out of context. He said, incredibly, no soldier died on his watch. Was he oblivious to the catastrophe, to the disaster in Afghanistan? He said border crossings during his presidency were fewer than Trump. Christy Hutcherson is going to be joining us. She is the head and founder of Women Fighting for America, widely recognized as an expert on what's going on in our border. She will talk to us about that. She said unemployment was 15% under Trump. It was 6.3. He said that Trump wants to he wants to extend the age to receive Social Security and cut benefits, both false. He said that there are 10,000 trillionaires in the country who are being undertaxed. I don't know where he came up with that number. He said that there is nowhere in the country where abortions are being performed in the 8th and 9th months. Anyone can see the video online of former Virginia Governor Ralph Northam talking exactly about this grisly procedure. Biden said that the Border Patrol endorsed him. That was a lie. Border Patrol immediately put out a statement saying that they had never endorsed him. Said he was handed a bad economy in free fall when in fact the GDP was climbing and inflation was under 2%. Said that Trump told people to inject people with bleach to address the COVID-19 virus. Not what he said. False. Said that Trump and corporate greed are what created inflation. What created inflation is the spending spree that Joe Biden has been on. Essentially printing press money, shipping half of it to Ukraine and spending the rest of it on the new Green Deal and the Inflation Reduction Act, which is really the Inflation Tsunami Act. Said that Donald Trump's tax cuts only rewarded the wealthy. False. Trump cut taxes across the board. A rising tide lifts all boats. Said that when Trump was president, that we were still killing people in Afghanistan, after then doubling down and said that, again, no American service person died on his watch. False. Claimed that the border bill the Democrats wanted would have solved the problems, but that Donald Trump held the bill up because of the politics of it. In fact, the so-called Lankford bill would have guaranteed 2 million illegals a year automatically could enter the country. It was not anywhere near a plan to solve the problems. Said the only terrorists who came over the border and killed Americans were under Trump. That's false. Claimed that veterans are much better off under Joe Biden. Another lie. Blamed Trump for Ukraine, saying that Trump encouraged Putin to go in, when the exact opposite, the fact that Trump's unpredictability and stern warnings to Vladimir Putin are what kept him from going into Ukraine. The losers and suckers line we already discussed. Implied that his son died in Iraq. He didn't actually say it, but he implied it. repeated this retribution line about what Donald Trump actually said about his presidency. I mean, this list goes on and on because Joe Biden is perhaps the biggest liar and plagiarist in American political history. And he and his wife have no intention of leaving. Getting rid of them without his acquiescence is pretty much impossible. He did, in the end, get 95% of the 4,000 delegates. And very, very soon, this problem is going to manifest itself. In Nevada, for example, it is too late to get Joe Biden's name off the ballot as the Democratic nominee. It is also too late in Wisconsin. I note that both of them are swing states. Very shortly, it will be too late in Georgia. That deadline is hard upon us. 74 days before the election, it will be too late to get his name off the ballot in Texas. But let's go take a look at some of the worst moments of this debate where my expectation level for Joe Biden was very low, but Joe managed to drop below it. Let's roll that.
Folks, how are you? Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare, we're trying to provide housing for Black Americans. The impact on the choice. The idea that they're going to, I'm proposing that everybody, the millionaires pay 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. And wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare for us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 billionaires in America. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it stopped. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more border patrol and more asylum officers.
That was truly, truly scary. Do the Democrats really want to nominate that man? We'll talk about it more when we come right back. This is the Roger Stone Show right here at 77 WABC. So whatever you do, don't touch that dial. And any place on the planet, you can find us at WABCRadio.com, where we're live streaming right now in over 173 countries. We'll be right back.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
You've created a cool indoor retreat. Now let Tri-Peaks provide the quiet and energy-efficient comfort you can depend on. With a range of innovative cooling solutions, like the Carrier Infinity Heat Pump, that delivers premium home heating and cooling performance. Learn more at TriPeaksAir.com. You make it a home. Let Tri-Peaks make it more comfortable. Rebates, incentives, and financing are available for a limited time. Tri-Peaks and Carrier. Turn to the experts.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back. I'm Roger Stone. We are analyzing the post-political landscape after the disastrous debate performance in which Donald Trump, I think, exceeded already high expectations, and Joe Biden looked like a deer in the headlights. I can't explain his gravelly voice. I can't explain the dopey kind of vacant grin on his face. It's as if no one told him the camera will be on you at all times. He kept making strange faces. His color seemed extraordinarily pale. He looked unhealthy, and he kept touching something in his ear. I said the day before the debate that Trump should demand an inspection to see if Joe was wearing some kind of high-tech, easily hidden earpiece in which someone, I don't know, Barack Obama, for example, was giving me the answers. Barack Obama actually joked about that, said he'd like to sit in his basement in his sweats, talk into a microphone where the sitting president, his puppet, would take direction. You can look it up, folks. It's real. So if they do succeed in getting Joe to step aside, which I think is going to be extraordinarily difficult, the one thing the Biden folks have done is to make sure that those delegates, those key delegates at the convention, are Biden people. On the other hand, under their rules, there are some 700 so-called super delegates. Those are in the hands of the Democratic Party establishment. They've already put the carrot out there that Joe could keynote the convention, and presumably Kamala Harris would be your front runner, at least in a normal situation. But there's great fear in the Democratic Party that she is so inexorably linked to Joe Biden. She's one of the ones who's been telling us how sharp as a tack he is. Let's listen to this little bite of Kamala Harris talking about Biden's terrific debate performance.
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back. 15% unemployment. He decimated the economy. Absolutely decimated the economy. Yep, that's why there was no inflation.
All right, well, we're a little out of sync here. That is the wrong cut, but let me continue. We are in a situation in which she would normally be the front runner. That's why I say that you could only displace a woman of color within their party with another far more popular woman of color, which is why I think an open convention would demand the nomination of the most popular Democrat in the country who's eligible. Her husband's not technically eligible, having served 2 terms, and that would be Michelle Obama. Let's listen now to Kamala Harris covering up for Joe Biden's disastrous debate performance.
President Biden 4 years ago, and he was a very different person on the stage 4 years ago when you debated him. You must, I mean, that's certainly true, is it not?
Anderson, the point has to be performance in terms of what a president does. A president who incites an insurrection against the Capitol. No, but I got the point that you're making about a 1.5 hour debate tonight. I'm talking about 3.5 years of performance in work that has been historic.
But whether it be infrastructure, the man who we saw on the stage tonight, is that the person you see in meetings every day?
The person that you saw on the debate stage that has, for the last 3.5 years, up until today, performed in a way that has been about, whether it be in the Oval Office, negotiating bipartisan deals so that we have an infrastructure, a real infrastructure plan where we're putting trillions of dollars on the streets of America to upgrade our infrastructure. Whether it be the person I see in the Oval Office who is meeting with heads of the military and the intelligence community and in the Situation Room, ensuring the safety of America. The person I see in Joe Biden on the world stage, convening world leaders who often ask for his advice, most recently just during the G7 conference. So I'm not going to spend all night with you talking about the last 90 minutes when I've been watching the last 3.5 years of performance.
So we're expected to believe that Joe is vigorous, hale and hearty, and totally focused and capable. Yet there's a stunning story right now in the UK Daily Mail and elsewhere that says that he's essentially only cognizant from 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, and that he's incapable of doing late night or late evening events. His own Justice Department essentially said that although he had illegally retained confidential and classified and top secret documents in violation of the law, that he had too much mental deterioration to stand a trial. So this could play out a number of different ways. If they don't force Joe out through the 25th Amendment, which is, that is the neutron bomb option, he could force his way to the nomination. He could also agree to go under the 25th Amendment, but then actually, since these delegates are Biden delegates, he could deliver the nomination to Kamala Harris. Then if that happened, of course, it would obviate the two women of color issue that I described earlier. But then Kamala Harris would need a running mate. Watch out for Hillary Clinton. That short-tempered, foul-mouthed, entitled kleptocrat has just launched a new book and is going on a book tour. There's so much photoshopping and airbrushing of her picture on the cover of her new book, it's hard to believe. But she is still bitter over her loss. And let's face it, if Kamala Harris became president and Hillary Clinton became vice president, Kamala Harris would need a food taster. Then, of course, you have Gavin Newsom, who is always maneuvering in the shadows. He was grinning like a Cheshire cat doing spin, talking about what a great job Joe Biden did in the debate, hoping that that gets him browning points. But perhaps he is Kamala's vice president. Whoops, two of them from California. Well, that would be a violation of the 12th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Article 2 essentially says that while two people who live in the same state, two people who are legal residents of the same state, are permitted to be nominated by a party for president and vice president, in the event that they carried that state, they would have to forfeit the electoral college votes of that state. The same issue that, in a way, makes it difficult for Donald Trump to choose Senator Marco Rubio or Congressman Byron Donalds or General Michael Flynn or any other Floridian for vice president. This, you know, we're going to go to a wide open convention. I still put my money on Kamala Harris, on Michelle Obama. We do have a couple other important things today. Steve Bannon reports to prison, and his co-host on the War Room, Natalie Winters, joins us. Mike Crispy, who is on Rumble at his show Last Word, as well as Mike Crispy Unafraid, pops in with a New Jersey report. Looking forward to that. Clearly, the convicted felon epithet did not have its desired effect. And Trump's pivot when attacked on January 6th was absolutely almost perfect, pitch perfect. Let's listen to it.
Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible.
There you have it. I think that was the perfect pivot. I've said on this show many times, the Democratic platform is Trump is a convicted felon. January 6th, he wants to end all abortions. Not true. He supports the states making those decisions. And they're going to cut Social Security. That was one of the biggest whoppers that Joe told in the show. There is a small subgroup of House Republicans who have proposed extending the age and means testing of outside income. Donald Trump has made it very clear that not only does he oppose that, but the guy who's on videotape on many occasions saying we have to do exactly those two things is none other than Joe Biden. All right, folks, strap in. This is the Roger Stone Show. As the great Jackie Gleason would say, away we go.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back. This is the Roger Stone Show here at 77 WABC Radio. Let me urge you right now to go to the App Store on your cell phone and download the 77 WABC radio app that allows you to listen to all of these great shows. If you can't tune in when they actually air, they are archived there and you can enjoy them. It is the very best of both talk and entertainment, AM radio. Before we go to my guest, very interesting, the University of New Hampshire's Granite State poll came out. It shows that Joe Biden holds a 3-point lead over Donald Trump. This is a state which Biden carried 4 years ago, 3+ years ago. But more interestingly, in the question of those who do not support Biden, who they would like to see Trump choose as his running mate, former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard was at 24, Vivek Ramaswamy at 17, Tim Scott at 13, and everyone else in single digits. That is very extraordinarily interesting news. All right, joining me now is a woman who knows about the border. There are a lot of claims made about the border in this debate. I think President Trump very effectively hammered the open border issue and the way it is destroying America. But folks, you don't know the half of it. Christy Hutcherson is the founder, president, and the spokeswoman for an organization called Women Fighting for America. She is widely recognized as a geopolitical security expert, and she is an absolute expert on what's going on our border, having spent much time and traveled over performed over 100 border operations missions, and covered over 2,500 miles of our border. When I want to know anything about the problem at our southern border, this is who I call. Christy Hutcherson, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
I'm thrilled to be here. Hi, Roger. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent. So, numbers, we keep hearing numbers thrown around as to how many illegals are really in the country. And people always seem to a 10 million illegals. Do you think that number is anywhere near right?
No, it's a false number, 100%. Roger, 4 years that I've personally spent with me and my team on not just the southern border. I think it's really important to understand the United States of America actually has 5 borders. We have a southern, we have a northern, east, west coast, and we have an airspace. Biden has been illegally flying in illegals from outside of the United States directly into the United States for quite some time as well. And during the travels that I've had, when you interview and you talk with private business owners, ranchers who have property along the border, when you talk to sheriffs, Border Patrol agents, U.S. Marshals, I've been in Mexico talking to the federales and those individuals on that side of the border, and then in Canada and, of course, West and East Coast. And when you start really looking at all the numbers and the data, it's data-driven. Gotaways are a very interesting thing that we really need to be talking about and expanding on in depth. And what I mean by that is when they talk about gotaway numbers, what they're looking at with those numbers, Roger, are when a camera system or some type of system triggers, or by chance there happened to be a law enforcement, Border Patrol agent or somebody, which is very rare that happens, that they spot these guys, right? So we know from my personal experience, boots on the ground, I can't get into all the operations we've done, camping out for days upon days in certain sectors. And when we catch individuals triggering these systems, typically the camera system, Roger, will pick up about 10 to 12, sometimes 15 individuals. Well, what it's not showing you is how many other people are around them that's not being picked up by those cameras. So when we've talked to and studied the numbers, studied the data, the real numbers are staggering. And America needs to understand this is serious. This is an active invasion. We have over 30 million who have entered the United States undetected, who are here illegally by the hands of the Biden administration.
You shocked me recently when you were on my net-based show, The Stone Zone, and you talked about the weapons that people are bringing into the country. It's not just the manpower. It's not the disproportionate number of single military-age men from China, from the Middle East, as well as other parts of the globe, but the weaponry they're bringing into the country. Speak to that.
Well, Roger, we know that they're smuggling all sorts of weapons into the United States. For example, it's been almost 2 years now. Me and my team were doing an operation. We were down in San Luis, which is in the Yuma sector, and I was riding along with a friend, my dear friend, who used to be the police chief in that area, and we came across a very sophisticated tunneling system. And what's unique about this, there's tunnels all over the border, on both northern border, southern border, mostly on the southern. This was a highly fortified tunnel. It was almost 4 football fields long. It had fortified walls, ceilings, ventilation system, a rail system, fiber optics, electricity. And the fortified walls and ceilings were to shield, right, from us being able to see. But the sophistication of this particular tunnel was reminiscent of how Hamas, how ISIS builds their tunnels over there. The TCOs, the transcriminal organization, the cartels, they really they did not have that sophistication of the complexities to build these type of tunnels until recently. And so what are they smuggling in? I promise you, it's not humans and drugs and the things that most people will go to. This particular tunnel had agencies there. The federal agents, when we were there, and they were being very hush-hush, and it was completely closed off. We had scientists there looking at what was going on inside these tunnels. I believe they were looking for particles to pick up possibly either small nuclear-type devices. It could be, weapons of just all sorts, dirty bombs. Who knows what they were trying to look for. And so when you look at the open borders and how open they have been, and especially think about the northern border, Roger. The northern border is probably the most wide open border with hardly any law enforcement or Border Patrol agents scanning that area. Canada has been cooperating and collaborating with China, Russia, up in upstate New York and near Vermont. Me and my team were doing some stuff up there, and we can tell you Chinese and Russians have been flooding the border in that area. And by the way, these are not just anybody. These are military-style guys, mercenaries, that have been coming over that we've been detecting for over 2.5 years. I've reported on this. I've told people about this, and to deaf ears. We have a Trojan horse situation on our hands. We have 26 tons of ammonium nitrate, Roger, that is still missing. We have weapons that are being smuggled in, dirty bombs that I believe have been smuggled in. And then you couple that with the seriousness of China, Russia, and Iran working with the criminal organizations and Latin American countries. We're in a lot of trouble right now. And I really, in the next few minutes, I really want to stress how close China has become to the borders of the United States. And I haven't even touched on the opioid crisis where China is working with the cartels, not just giving the precursors, but we have intel and information that China has actually set up training and facilities in Mexico and in Colombia to help with the fentanyl, and they've pretty much taken over the operations of the production of fentanyl and xylazine and some other very deadly stuff. Fentanyl, America, can be used as a bioweapon. It can be a serious weapon used to kill millions and millions of Americans, and nobody's even talking about fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
It is incredible. You have seen firsthand the devastation of not just illegal immigration, but child and human trafficking, organ trafficking, massive amounts of lethal drugs entering the United States, as well as the incredible atrocities being committed at the border by these criminal organizations. It's very hard to imagine, but have our Border Patrol agents essentially been ordered by this administration to essentially stand down?
Yes. I believe our federal government has committed treasonous acts against the United States of America. When you look at what actual treason means, it is the very definition. When you have the White House instructing the DHS and Alejandro Mayorkas to not uphold the laws. We're not talking about creating new laws. They are literally, Roger, right now, they are not holding up the actual statutes and the federal laws that are on the books. They are told to stand down. They are told to let this continue to happen. And the Border Patrol agents, bless them, they are hardworking men and women. They really are. And people are like, well, why aren't they doing their job? Well, at the end of the day, I can stand in their shoes to say, I might do something differently. I know I would. But they have mouths to feed. They have their family. They have mortgages to pay. They have pensions. They put in their life. And they're threatened with all of that if they go against an unconstitutional order that's, I believe, been given. And so the American people need to wake up, and they need to put serious pressure. We don't have, I know President Donald J. Trump has everything sitting right now. He should win the White House, but I can tell you right now, they already have a plan B, C, and D to make sure that doesn't happen, and we need to be talking about that as well. But you know what? We need to be putting pressure on these lawmakers to actually uphold the law and the Constitution, because more American lives on a mass scale are going to be completely murdered. We're going to have infiltration. We're going to have terrorist attacks very soon, and there's going to be serious bloodshed because of the policies of this administration.
It is interesting. Presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says that he doesn't believe that Communist China poses a military threat to us. I'm not sure if what he's saying is that they have so completely infiltrated all of our institutions with money, whether it's buying some of the A-list American companies or buying up hundreds of thousands of prime ranch land and farmland, the food-producing breadbasket of America. They're doing that as well. The violence at our border and some of the stories that I have heard for you literally curl the ears. Does it take new legislation? It is interesting that Mayorkas and Joe Biden both bragged about repealing all of Trump's border policies that have caused this open border. This cannot be a mistake. They either want to change the complete makeup of the American electorate. Interesting that voter registration forms now being given out in California bear a picture of Michelle Obama. What's that about? Or these people have been somehow bribed or otherwise have an interest in the destruction of the country. And as you point out in an extraordinary paper you sent me, time is extraordinarily late. If we could wave a wand and make you president tomorrow, or just make you the director of the Border Patrol and give you your authority, what steps would you take?
Well, we could have the border closed in 24 hours. This is not complicated at all. If I were the Border Patrol, I would instruct all agencies, at the might of the federal government, to descend, including the National Guard, to go down to the border, secure the border. I would advise the president what he's already done in the past, and that is put pressure not just on Mexico, but all of the Latin American countries who are aiding and abetting these illegals to come up through from the Darien Gap all the way up. I would completely cut off 100% of all funding of every NGO who is helping, aiding, and abetting this communist terrorist takeover of our nation. They would be defunded immediately, and they would not have funds again. And China is the number one threat to the United States of America. And if Kennedy believes that, he is sadly misinformed. Let me just tell you, and I'm not a fan of Christopher Wray, but him and I agree wholeheartedly on this point. The FBI director said counterintelligence and economic espionage efforts emanating from government of China and the CCP are a grave threat to the economic well-being and values of the United States. Confronting this threat is the FBI's top counterintelligence priority. I'm going to just kind of read a couple things this is from the article that I wrote. I have been in these countries. I have seen firsthand what I'm getting ready to tell you. This is from firsthand knowledge. China has a massive footprint in Mexico, Latin America, the Caribbean, China. And I'm going to give you just a couple examples. First and foremost, they have missile silos. And I want you to think about this. Military bases and missile silos, ICBM capability, being built currently in Barbados, in Jamaica, and in Cuba. Military silos that can carry ICBMs that will hit the United States of America. China is using natural resources, telecommunications, Huawei, not just in Canada with the 5G network infrastructure and sparking national security concerns, but they've also made a deal with Cuba. Cuba is right off the coast of the United States of America. It's about, 68 miles from Florida. Bermuda, Bahamas. They've made a deal with Bahamas. Jamaica. In Peru, they just are in the process of building a $3 billion port development project. This port is capable of housing submarines, military ships. It's enhancing China's strategic reach. The port is also logistically important because it can support the PLAN, which is the People's Liberation Army Navy. They are using economic coercion. They have ties to Cuba and Venezuela. They're bringing in military equipment into Venezuela, and they've been doing this since I know for a fact of the Obama years.
Christy, let me stop you there. We're going to have to take a quick break. This is a chilling truth-telling session. When we come back, perhaps Christy will tell us about the land acquisitions around many major U.S. military installations in the United States. This is incredible stuff. We'll be right back with Christy Hutcherson, who is widely recognized as an expert on border security in the United States. Don't go away.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. If you are just tuning in, we're here with Christy Hutcherson, who is the Chief Operations Officer for Women Fighting for America. She's also someone who has spent many, many, many dangerous hours on our border, has been involved in literally hundreds of operations on our border to rescue people, to stand up for those who are being abused in this monstrous process. She is truly a frontline fighter for freedom, one of the only Americans actually who's traveled the whole 2,000 miles of our southern border and hundreds of miles of our forgotten northern border in her efforts to help expose the problem of illegal immigration. She knows firsthand the ugliness of the situation. She has an amazing paper up. If you're in LinkedIn, check her out, Christy Hutcherson. It's Hutcherson, which is a much larger geopolitical examination of this existential threat. But now I'm going to let her talk. You were telling us about the Chinese presence in our hemisphere. Obviously, many young Chinese and others coming through Panama, through the Darien Gap. Tell us about that.
So, yeah, we have, unfortunately, a lot of military-age men, militia groups, both from Russia, China. Right now, the numbers are staggering, over 200,000 PLA Chinese military men who have come over the border. To answer your question about the strategic property buy-up near our strategic military bases, Grand Forks, North Dakota, the Fufeng Group, it's a Chinese company. They purchased 370 acres of land near Grand Forks Air Force Base. This base is a significant intelligence hub, and it houses the 319th Reconnaissance Wing and key military communications infrastructure. Laughlin Air Force Base in Texas, the Guangzhou Energy Company, he's a Chinese billionaire, ties to the Communist Party. He tried to purchase 140,000 acres. They've purchased Smithfield Foods. And if Americans don't understand that the Chinese Communist Party owns Smithfield Foods, which is the number one and the largest producer of pork products, period, that raises serious concerns from a supply chain issue as well. Roger, one of the most important things I think that I am very, very concerned with, I can talk to you about the Jamaica Highway and the ports that they're doing. Again, the ports in Jamaica can strategically house military ships and submarines, not both by China, but the alliance that China is now making with Russia and North Korea. This is very strategic, and this is very important for Americans to understand that we are literally being surrounded. They've through their Belt and Road Initiative, Belize, El Salvador are also part of this, Mexico. But one thing that really stands out to me probably the most is in Argentina. There is a deep space station operated by the Chinese military. The Argentinians have very limited access and functions within this highly restricted zone. This poses, I believe, one of the greatest threats. This station is operated by China Satellite Launch and Tracking Control General, CLTC. It is a division of the People's Liberation Army, and it is a strategic support force. This organization, Roger, is involved in space, cyber, and electronic warfare. This has, and I believe is being operated as a military application, not what they're posing that it is. They're not allowing transparency by anybody. The Argentinians only have access to 10% of this station's even antenna at any given time. I want to know, Roger, why? Why aren't we discussing this? Why are we not having open dialogue from the military, from this White House, about China's serious imminent threat and encroachment into our borders at our back door, not only inside the United States from a military operation, but right on our back door? And I'm going to tell you why. That was a rhetorical question. Because we know that the people who are running the show at the highest levels are puppets to China. And until we understand and literally tell China who they are, an enemy of the United States, we need to defund anything to do with China. We need to make America exceptional again. And what I mean by that is all manufacturing of any product that China right now is involved in, including our serious, delicate pharmaceuticals that we need for life-saving events for American citizens. We need to pull all of that back, and we need to start manufacturing. We need to have a great manufacturing startup here in the United States like we've never seen before. Think about World War I and World War II, what we did when we fired up factories. We need to do that. Let's divert money from Ukraine war and all of these other, I believe, distractionary fires, so we're not really truly seeing the threat that's really imminent, and that is China and Russia and Iran and North Korea's alliance. That's what we need to do.
Colonel John Mills has been on this show recently, pointing out that the Chinese are running a sophisticated spy operation based in Cuba. But to answer your question, I think we know the answer, because members of the Biden family, including Hunter, have taken $7.8 million from China. Hunter Biden got an extremely valuable shares in a Chinese energy company. He's not divested himself of that, as we were told. He merely shifted control of it to one of his personal attorneys, the same one who's paid down his taxes. The answer is that this administration is compromised, and that money has flowed to not only members of the first family, but also to Joe Biden himself. Yes, that is an act of treason. This is based not on anything other than all of the bank records that were subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee. That is the real problem. All right, unfortunately, we are out of time. Let me thank our guest, Christy Hutcherson. Christy, if people want to go to your website and learn more about your courageous work to expose dangers to America, where should they go?
Please, if you want to support the work that we're doing, we 100% of our money goes to our operations. None of us take salaries. We're in this to save this country and expose those WFFA, that's Whiskey, Foxtrot, Foxtrot Alpha, WFFA.WIN, because we are going to win this war. Make no mistake, this is a military operation at the highest level to bring down the United States of America. We are being surrounded. And the other thing, Roger, really quick, we're doing training. Meet4America.org. That's MEET, the number 4, America.org. Go to that website. We're going to be in York, Pennsylvania, before the election at the end of August. It is the most important weekend, I believe, that you can spend. So Meet for America, WFA.win. God bless you guys. Thank you so much for having me on the Stone Zone, and I am so appreciative. Prepare, America, because we have a government who does not care about you. They are coming for you.
God bless you, Christy Hutcherson. Thank you for joining us on the Roger Stone Show. And folks, we'll be right back.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. This is Roger Stone, and this is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC Radio. No matter where you are on the planet, you can go to WABCRadio.com and listen to this show and all of the great programming here at 77 WABC, the home of Cousin Brucey when I was growing up. This is the station I listened to out there in the Connecticut suburbs in northern Westchester, driving my 1965 yellow Volkswagen convertible with the black top. Tuned in to Cousin Brucey. Those were the good old days. So having exhausted all of his appeals, including an appeal to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals and a direct appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, Steve Bannon, who is the host of the War Room, a very influential net-based show that is extremely popular and motivational for millions of America First Americans, has been ordered to report to prison tomorrow because he defied a subpoena from the January 6th committee. Now, Steve Bannon and I have had our differences. I'm not going to recount his actions during my trial because the Bible tells us to forgive those who have trespassed against us. And I believe Steve Bannon is being horribly legally mistreated. He, rather than plead the Fifth Amendment, which I did when I received a subpoena, not because I did anything wrong, and not because I knew anything significant, but because I know how House Democrats will twist your words into some kind of process crime. Steve Bannon's situation is very different. He specifically did not respond to the subpoena from the January 6th committee, a committee that was set up outside House rules, in violation of House rules, a committee that had no ranking member, and a subpoena is only binding if co-signed by the chairman and the ranking member of the committee, a committee that was not made up of the Republicans recommended by the then minority leader, but where two anti-Trump Republicans were plucked and put on the committee by Nancy Pelosi to try to give it bipartisan legitimacy. But make no mistake about it, everyone on this committee hated Donald Trump and was intent on framing him. We now know definitively that they tampered with evidence, that they suborned perjury. Cassidy Hutchinson, a former aide to Mark Meadows, testified under oath that the president told Chief of Staff Meadows to call Roger Stone and General Michael Flynn late in the day or in the evening of January 5th and then Liz Cheney helpfully said, find out what was going to happen on January 6th. No such call was ever made. There's no phone record. I've never spoken to Mark Meadows. I think I met him once in the green room at Fox back when he was a congressman. I had no communications with him. Either has General Flynn. That was a perjury. She additionally perjured herself when she said that she persuaded Meadows not to attend a meeting in a war room in the Willard Hotel, but that later on he called Roger Stone and General Michael Flynn to get a debrief on the meeting. Completely false. If there was a war room in the Willard, I didn't know about it, nor was I in any such meetings, nor was General Flynn. Again, suborning perjury. Manipulating videos, including some featuring yours truly. The video that they leaked to CNN has a completely different visual track than the one they showed in their hearing. It's because this was a made-for-television kabuki act. And there are legitimate constitutional issues regarding Steve Bannon, and here's why. The President of the United States asserted executive privilege over Bannon's testimony. He wrote Mr. Bannon a letter specifically telling him that he could not testify. It is, without any question, true that Bannon's attorney instructed him that he would be violating the law if he testified. Bannon's lawyer, at that time I believe Robert Costello, tried to work it out with the committee, saying that if some judge would order that there was no executive video, Bannon would make himself available. I love Peter Navarro, but he did not assert executive privilege in his case. So it is an outrage that Mr. Bannon is being incarcerated pending appeal. There are serious constitutional issues that have been raised regarding the charges against him. He's very ably represented by David Schoen, who I think is one of the smartest lawyers in the country. I think the whole thing is a travesty, and I call for and stand for justice for Steve Bannon. Even though we haven't always been on the same side of everything, we are on the same side of the fight to make America great. Joining me now is his co-host on The War Room. Natalie Winters joins us to talk about the outrageousness of this situation. Natalie, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Thank you so much for having me, and that's such a wonderful synopsis. I feel like you don't even need me.
Well, I had Congressman Burleson, Eric Burleson, on the show last weekend. He was excellent, by the way. He is an extraordinarily brave and courageous conservative, and I saw that he had sponsored legislation in the House that would have the effect of decertifying, as it were, the January 6th committee, report, which needs to be done. On the legal theory, I'm not an attorney, that would void the subpoenas to Steve and to Peter Navarro and to Mark Meadows and others. But what I really don't understand, and perhaps you do know more than I do, there is within the House an entity called the Bipartisan Legal Advisory Group, which speaks for the House in legal matters, speaks for them in court, and Matt Gaetz was among the first to say that this subpoena could be voided and Steve Bannon could avoid jail if the Bipartisan Legal Advisory Committee, which is now controlled by Speaker Johnson on a 3-2 vote, would simply say that the January 6th committee and its report was, as we now know, illegitimate. Is there any update on the Speaker's willingness to move this important matter?
Well, I will reiterate what Steve has said, and he has always said if it took him in his case for the House to finally get their act together years into what is the 119th Congress to actually move on really nullifying the January 6th committee, then Steve is willing to take the arrows, willing to take the prison sentence. Why it took them so long to do this, just a few days before Steve's sentence was set to begin. I think for anyone who listens to your show, who listens to the War Room, I would say it's par for the course with a lot of the actions we've seen coming from House Republicans. There's just a lack of appetite to deliver real accountability against people who are destroying this country, who are intentionally weaponizing the federal government against, I would say, some of the most patriotic people in this country. In terms of where we stand on the Blagg appeal, obviously the Supreme Court did not grant the amicus brief that they filed kind of in conjunction with the BLAG voting 3-2 to in some ways decertify the January 6th committee, or at least put forth, again, additional evidence on top of the already mountains and piles of evidence that we have that this January 6th committee was, A, illegitimate from the get-go, but even if you put that aside, their conduct in terms of destroying and deleting documents, you would think that would be enough to have Steve, be able to stay out further on appeal. But unfortunately, Roger, it's something that you know all too well. This case and going after Steve has never been about playing by the book, has never been about the rule of law. If you look at how they have come after our show, much like yours, this legal case, this prison sentence is really just capping off years of full-blown warfare against War Room, whether it's the censorship, the deplatforming, taking us off YouTube, off Spotify. The New York Times labeled us the #1 spreader of misinformation. The Brookings Institute conducted extensive research trying to say that all the narratives we push are propaganda and are untrue. And they realized that despite their best efforts, all their old tactics that the establishment and regime media has always used to silence their loudest and most effective critics, yourself included, it didn't work because War Room kept growing. So their last-ditch effort was to throw Steve in jail, to silence him the best they could, forget a gag order. They want him in prison because they know they can't shut down War Room. So in terms of the intricacies on the legal side of the case, I don't really have any, concrete updates to provide you. Steve will be, reporting to prison tomorrow. But I don't think that it was ever really a question of law and jurisprudence to begin with. It was a question of how can they silence someone who is really effective, really poses an existential threat to the regime, to the powers that be.
Yeah, this is all about silencing the voices of MAGA. As you're well aware, roughly a week ago, a woman by the name of Lauren Windsor illegally recorded me at a Catholic event at Mar-a-Lago, where I said that Republicans should use every legal and technical tool to ensure that the next election is honest. I also voiced an opinion, a skepticism regarding the Florida documents case. I think I may still be right that the judge in that case may ultimately dismiss the case. I know that because I read Julie Kelly on X, and I read her Substack, not because I have any inside knowledge. But the distortions of that, in Rolling Stone, in the Daily Beast, in the Huffington Post, and the rest of the lame fake news media. Stone unveils secret plan to use judges and lawyers to steal the election. No, what I said was that if a voting station is shut down in the middle of the night, as we saw in Detroit, as we saw in Philadelphia, and the Democrat officials have the Republican observers physically removed by the police, then the lawyer for the Republicans needs to be able, in the middle of the night, if necessary, to find a judge to file an emergency motion. There's nothing whatsoever unusual about that, but you wouldn't know it from the whining and the smear tactics of the fake news media. I actually got a letter from some guy at Vanity Fair who wanted to know whether my comments were illegal. No, my comments were 100% legal. Somebody just needs to go listen to and read the transcript. So it's part and parcel of the same smear. It is an effort to silence Steve Bannon in the run-up to this election. How coincidental that the 4-month sentence will take us right up to the election. It is the same effort we see launched at Alex Jones, where they don't really want money. They just want to shut him down. The same thing we saw them try to do very spectacularly unsuccessfully to Tucker Carlson. None of that worked. It is to suppress the voices of MAGA. And unfortunately, this recent Supreme Court dodge, it's not really a decision, it's a dodge, in which the court seems to say it's perfectly all right for the federal government to work with private entities to abridge the First Amendment and free speech rights of Americans. And if you're an American who wants to challenge us in court, you don't have standing. That makes no sense to me. That is the greatest blow to free speech in my lifetime. Unbelievable. Your opinion?
It's projection, pure and simple. It's so cliche at this point to say, but when you look back not even just the Russia hoax or the foreign election interference narrative that they've been playing on repeat, on vamping it all the time. It was Nancy Pelosi's House Commission in 2018 that was saying that foreign governments could hack elections, that election machines weren't secure. Basically, the talking points that you hear our side saying now, it's only okay when one side says it, but when we actually take the reports that they produce, the ones that they're willing to, let the sunlight expose, certainly not the January 6th report, then suddenly it becomes a conspiracy theory. It becomes a talking point. But look, Roger, I think the fundamental miscalculation here, and I think perhaps the silver lining, if you can call it that, for the War Room posse who's listening right now and is, scared for Steve, you have to think about the alliances and allegiances and, frankly, just the resolve that is going to come from turning Steve Bannon into effectively a martyr. I mean, I probably wouldn't be on your show right now. You and Steve probably wouldn't be on this good of terms if it weren't for this, and that's a pretty scary alliance, I would think, that the deep state would fear when you see everyone kind of circling the wagon, circling the troops, and coming together, because we can rise above and realize that the enemy we are up against, it's not just a political party that, has a differing opinion of how you interpret the First Amendment, and they maybe think that corporations should be able to censor us and you want to debate Section 230. This is a global regime that, to their core, hate us and detest us and want us to own nothing and be happy. And the reason that they're panicking so much and that they're trying to shut down quite literally everyone who goes against mainstream narratives is because the year 2030 is so critically important to this globalist ruling class, to the Chinese Communist Party. Think about the United Nations. Their sustainable development goals are set to conclude in 2030. The World Economic Forum has its eyes set on 2030. For China, it's a huge year in terms of their global manufacturing and just ascent to global hegemony. And they know that if President Trump is back in office, that is going to severely impede their ability to roll out what really are their master plans for taking over this country and, frankly, the world. And that is why they are fighting tooth and nail. And that is why, Steve's really kind of echoing sentiment from all of this, which I want to reiterate to your audience. Like you said, don't write him letters in prison. Don't feel bad for him. Get involved. Get active, because they're trying to take away our voices. They've said it quite explicitly. They don't care about us. It's all projection, to the point where the Biden campaign is literally tweeting, attacking President Trump as being feeble and weak. I've never seen a better example of a Alinskyite projection than that. But, I think Steve just really wants me to impart the message, and it is the core of the War Room message. They cannot silence the MAGA movement. They can go after the leaders, they can go after the figureheads, but they are so scared of the grassroots wing that is taking over the Republican Party, because they know very well when Steve set out to transform the Republican Party, when the MAGA movement, when President Trump announced that he was running, it wasn't just the Republican Party that we wanted to transform. It is the country, it is the way politics is conducted in this country, and they are eternally scared because they know on the other side of it, trust me, when Steve is out of prison, when President Trump is back in office, accountability is going to look a heck of a lot different than it's looked under this, frankly, pretty weak-willed Republican Party that controls at least the House. So I think they're scared. They know the year 2030 is important, and I think they have severely overplayed their hand by doing this to Steve, by doing what they've done to you, and by going after the greats like Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson. I think is a very bad miscalculation.
All right, folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Natalie Winters, co-host of The War Room, Mike Crispi from Mike Crispi Unafraid, and Late Night's going to join us on the other side. We'll be right back, folks. Don't touch that dial.
It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. If you're just tuning in, we're talking to Natalie Winters, who is the co-host of War Room with Steve Bannon, about his plight and the fact that he is swiftly becoming a martyr for this movement. Joining us now is a Trump delegate from New Jersey, a leader in the America First movement in that state, but also the host of Last Call and Mike Crispi Unafraid, both at Rumble. Mike Crispi from New Jersey, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Roger, always great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
So I wanted to get you on because we have a development that's extremely disturbing. Donald Trump swept the New Jersey primary, record numbers. He had a crowd of 40,000 people in Wildwood, New Jersey, perhaps the largest or among the largest outdoor political rallies in American political history. But then I was shocked to read that the New Jersey State Republican Committee reelected the Republican National Committee man, longtime associate of Chris Christie, Bill Palatucci, who has in turn said that he will not support Donald Trump when he is legally nominated in the convention in July. What's going on here, Mike?
Well, Roger, it is disturbing, and it's disgraceful, quite frankly, because President Trump has the opportunity to turn this state red for the first time since 1988. Recent polling, everybody has seen it. It made headlines everywhere. Trump now is up by 1 in recent polling in this state. And we have an opportunity, but that opportunity, unfortunately, is being ruined and taken off the rails by these Chris Christie cronies that continue to plague this state. You know, people who know how the inside baseball politics works knows that at the RNC, the National Committee man and the National Committee women have a lot of power across the state. They're the people who have votes on RNC leadership and the likes. And in New Jersey, unfortunately to say, Chris Christie's bagman, Bill Palatucci, has been the National Committee man here, and he has been absolutely the antithesis to progress that President Trump has made in the state. So there was a re-election for the National Committee man post that occurred the night of the debate last Thursday, and President Trump endorsed Don Purdy in South Jersey for the position, America First, Patriot through and through. Bill Palatucci was running for the position, and he looks like he was done. However, due to, quite frankly, election fraud, that's what it is, election interference by Chris Christie himself and some of his cronies and allies, the election of the National Committee person was taken off the rails, and these insiders played this game. It was a secret ballot, and Chris Christie was doing things that I think, quite frankly, are illegal, offering or looking to help people get judgeships, offering legal work, offering certain types of contracts, basically doing the backroom establishment BS that people are tired of. And in the end of the day, the vote was 22-20 across the state amongst the state committee, and Palatucci prevailed. Roger, it is so disgraceful because the public in the state, the grassroots, want President Trump. They wanted Trump's pick, Don Purdy, but the Chris Christie bagman got back in there. And Roger, as you said, he's not even going to support President Trump at the convention. So what are we doing here?
Very good point. I have written extensively that as a U.S. attorney, Chris Christie essentially bribed a prosecutor with an extremely lucrative conservatorship to give his own brother, Christie's brother, a pass on an insider trading case in which everyone else involved in the case went to jail. So much for Chris Christie's Mr. Clean image. I understand he was personally buttonholing the members of the state committee, making, I think, if what you say is accurate, improper and illegal efforts to elect a man who will not stand up for President Trump. Natalie, your thoughts on this?
I mean, this is the establishment wing of the Republican Party doing what it does best. And I think it goes back to what we've been seeing really all the way to the House, to a lot of these so-called Republicans. They are not lining up to give President Trump the ability to have an effective second, what some would say third, but second term, right? You see whether it's policies that they're pursuing when it comes to things like pandemic trees and these sort of just fiscal deficits that are going to make his ability to rule so much more difficult, because he will not have the freedom, or frankly, at least the financial or fiscal freedom, to be able to implement the financial policies that he did in his first term. And I think you sort of see it, it sort of rears its ugly head, right? It becomes kind of the tip of the iceberg when you're dealing with actual personalities, actual people that you can sort of put a face to the name and you see what they're doing publicly. But I think this effort is so much broader and so much more vast, right, than just these, one-off people in certain states. But frankly, I think we should also take a step back and, it's what Mike was saying. How amazing is it that even in states that historically haven't been in play, President Trump is making such resounding victories and just such amazing advancements when it comes to really being able to connect with voters who historically, the Republican Party hasn't been able to. But I think it shows that he represents a different stripe of the Republican Party that this old wing of establishment hacks are not into, are not about. And frankly, it shows you, I think, the disdain that these people have for the MAGA movement, the grassroots types, right? They want the party to be controlled, very similar to the DNC, right? They're envious of the sort of elitist style that the DNC runs, where certain people get to pick who the nominee is and have a lot of influence. The RNC is supposed to be built and function a little bit differently, but I think they're very envious of that sort of authoritarian setup that the DNC has, because they think that they know better, right? They want to be our overlords. They want to make the political decisions, but that is what President Trump stands for, and that's what MAGA stands for, not letting these, establishment Republican hacks get to decide. So shout out and kudos to Mike Crispy. I know you've been leading the charge in New Jersey and everything you guys have been doing there.
Mike, we got about 2 minutes left. What about others in the state who are self-styled Trump supporters? Bill Spady is running for governor. Has he had anything to say about this outrageous refusal by the new Republican National Committee man to support the nominee of the party, Donald J. Trump?
Well, I got to tell you, Roger, we know one thing that is so important in this party, especially with President Trump's agenda, and that is loyalty. Okay, loyalty is what keeps things together. And it's crazy because the number one man who was helping Bill Palatucci was a man named George Gilmore. George Gilmore was pardoned by President Trump. He would have had a life sentence, pardoned him on his last day in office. And since that time, he's gone on to oppose President Trump's U.S. Senate candidate, Christine Serrano-Glasner. And then he was making calls, Roger, for Bill Palatucci. I'm told, I have it on good information, he was making calls and doing a lot of this strong-arming. Now, here's the thing here. There are candidates running for governor, and I think every candidate needs to condemn and disavow Chris Christie, Bill Palatucci, and this behavior from George Gilmore. Bill Spadia is our MAGA guy in the race right now. And Bill Spadia, just in all honesty here, transparency, he has George Gilmore as one of his consultants. Now, he hired him before this Senate thing and the National Committee thing started, but he's on his payroll as his consultant. So Bill Spadia should be leading the charge in condemning and disavowing the Christie, Palatucci, and Gilmore. These people, a lot of them owe their careers and their success and their fundraising to President Trump's success. They need to act like it, and it's the only way we're going to win this state in November. They need to be focused on helping President Trump, not their own ulterior objectives. So I think that Bill Spadia, quite frankly, should be on the forefront of that, and everybody else should be too, because we got a chance to win the state, and then we have a governor race next year. The winner of that primary is going to pick the leader of the party, the new NJGOP. It needs to be a MAGA person, Roger. Enough of the rhino games in this state of New Jersey that should be a red state.
I'm afraid we're out of time here, folks. I want to thank my guest, Natalie Winters, who is the co-host of The War Room with Steve Bannon, and our prayers for Steve in the days ahead, and also Mike Crispy, a Trump delegate and leader of the America First movement, that wing of the Republican Party in the Garden State. Thank you both so much for joining us. Folks, don't go away. This is The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back.
It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back, folks. This is Roger Stone, and this is The Roger Stone Show. I have promised many of you online that today I would give you my Aunt Marie's marinara sauce recipe, and here it is. Make sure you have a pen and paper ready. It's really very simple. All you really need here are a medium-sized onion, 8 large cloves of garlic, salt and pepper, 2 large cans of San Marzano tomatoes. Must be San Marzano. That's not a brand, folks. That's a type of tomato grown in a specific valley in Italy. It'll be marked DOP. Don't fall for the San Marzano style tomatoes. That's a ripoff. You're going to need 1 can of tomato paste. You're going to need some oregano and some basil. and some mixed Italian spices. It's that simple. You're going to need some olive oil. I like to get olive oil that's infused with garlic. You get all of these things at Gristedes, by the way. And it's very simple. You will chop you will dice the onion. You will mince the garlic. In a little bit of the olive oil, you will saute the onions until translucent. Remembering that garlic has a much lower burning point than onions. Once the onions are translucent, you will throw in the garlic. You will be very careful not to burn the garlic. If you burn the garlic, or you burn it in any process, you got to throw it all out. You then will add the 2 cans of San Marzano tomatoes. You will add your oregano, your basil, your mixed Italian spices. And here's my Aunt Marie's secret. 1 can of tomato paste, an equal amount of water, salt and pepper, of course, to taste. There it is, the perfect marinara. Cook it for 4 hours on low heat, and you can put your meatballs in there. You can put your sausage in there. You can just spread it over your pasta. Mangia. You love it. That's my Aunt Marie. God bless her. 92 years old, still living in Norwalk, Connecticut. A shout out to you and your great sauce. A lot of disagreement at the debate about the state of the economy today. A lot of disagreement about the state of the economy when Donald Trump became president. When things like this happen, I turn to the most knowledgeable guy I know about the economy. That would be Barry Habib, who is the chief executive officer of MBS Highway. He is a famous American entrepreneur. He may be the country's leading expert on the mortgage and housing markets, but he's also a very shrewd and knowledgeable overall economic analyst. He has won many awards for his extraordinary career in business. He's 3-time Crystal Ball winner by Fannie Mae, Pulsenomics, and Zillow for the most accurate real estate forecasts out of the 150 top economists in the United States. He also has a secret life. He was the lead producer and managing partner of Rock of Ages, the 27th longest running show on Broadway. And he joins us now on the Roger Stone Show to try to sort this all out. Barry Habib, welcome.
Roger, thank you so much. Thanks for the kind introduction. And wow, what a great show. I've been listening and just enjoying it so much. I better bring the good stuff because the show is just phenomenal. And on top of that, we get a marinara recipe. It's like everything.
Well, I promised it and I had to deliver. So here's Joe Biden speaking at the debate.
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back. 15% unemployment. He decimated the economy, absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation.
All right, that's a good place to start. You have been on this show. You helped us dissect the unemployment numbers and the way they have been jiggered to show certain things. But what was unemployment? What was inflation first, and what was unemployment when Donald Trump became president, and how does it compare to today?
So Joe Biden said 6.4%, but what did Bob Uecker say? Missed it by that much? I'm sorry, he said 15%. It was actually 6.4%, so missed it by that much. That was really just a very egregious claim that it was 15%. Then he said the economy was decimated. It was flat on its back. Well, let's remember that this was coming out of 2020. Did something happen in 2020? Was there a forced shutdown of the economy? Did we have to force 20 million jobs to cease to exist for a period of time? Yes, what Donald Trump was doing was building them back, and putting the fact that it was only 6.4% was miraculous. And then Joe Biden also took credit for gaining 15,000 jobs. That's just baloney. All that was the mandatory shutdown that we had was putting those back. In fact, Roger, if you look at it statistically, how about this one? There have been 0 full-time jobs under Joe Biden's watch. 0. All the jobs that he has been part-time jobs and multiple job holders because people are struggling to make ends meet. Under Donald Trump, we put much more jobs in place. But, you asked a few things here. When he talked about inflation, there was no inflation. Well, there was low inflation because there was no crazy spending. We are currently spending, and it's come down, 23% of GDP.
They don't trigger race war and civil unrest and
so let's speak to the inflation question, because it is the most audacious. I mean, what people don't understand is that pre-pandemic, we had the greatest rate of job growth, the greatest rate of wage growth, the greatest rate, the lowest levels of unemployment among all Americans, black Americans, white Americans, the urban, rural, young, old. It was really quite extraordinary. And you're absolutely right. The economy was destroyed only because Donald Trump, for the public safety, was forced to destroy his signature accomplishment. But America was already on the way back. This was one of the greatest series of distortions I have seen. Now, Biden keeps insisting we have the most robust economy in our history. What do you say to that?
We don't. There are signs everywhere that we're actually in a recession. The thing of it is, it probably will be called a recession. However, it's the umpire in this is the National Bureau of Economic Research. And what they have to do is they have to go through certain tests over time. And what they always do is you find out you're a recession many, many, many months afterwards. There are lots of my colleagues who are brilliant who say we are in a recession that began in the fourth quarter of 2023. And one of the falsehoods that's out there is the numbers that we get from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, look, I'm not going to necessarily say there's something nefarious going on there. Maybe it is true they're understaffed. But, Roger, let's understand when we get the job numbers on the first Friday of every month, and we're going to get one this Friday, so it's very meaningful. There's a lot of things that we have to remember here. The jobs numbers that we receive from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it is meant to be a snapshot. It's meant to give you a quick look that should be reliable at the state of affairs in the job market. However, the ultimate way that we reconcile this is with the QCEW. So this is the census, the quarterly census of employment and wages, QCEW, quarterly census of employment and wages. Now, they look at 12 million establishments, but because it's so many, it takes time to get the numbers right. Now, Roger, get ready. Just buckle your seatbelts here, because when the BLS said how many jobs were created for the fourth quarter, now it takes time, so we're just reconciling just the fourth quarter. The BLS told us that we had 637,000 jobs. That sounds like pretty good economy. And you get the labor secretary gets out in the White House, look at all the jobs. You get Joe Biden, look at all the jobs. But hold on a second. When we reconcile the numbers correctly, the QCEW says, oops, it's not 637. It's only 116,000 jobs. That's a difference of 521,000 jobs. Now, when they did it for the entire year of 2023, here's what they found out. They found out that the BLS themselves overstated job creations by over 360,000, and that's after the BLS made 2 revisions to the downside. So they overstated it by 600,000. Then they said, oops, yeah, we screwed up. It's only 360. But then the QCEW said, no, guess what? You missed it by another 770,000 jobs. Overall, 1.3 million job overstatement. So we do not have the robust economy. And by the way, when I talk about full-time and part-time jobs, just in the last report, full-time jobs, we lost 625,000. We gained 286,000 part-time jobs. This is the state of affairs here. We have multiple job holders. The economy is under stress. Here's a couple of other things about the state of economy, and I'm sorry to go a little bit long here, but I want to it's important. The only reason we are not in a drop-dead recession is because we are spending 23% of GDP. Now, historically, when do you spend 23% of GDP? It's in crises. Last time we did it, it was during the great financial crisis in 2010, the time before the Gulf War, the time before that, during the debacle that we had in the early 80s when we had a double-dip recession. These are the only times you spend this much. It is out of control. A couple of other quick things, Roger. If we had such a great economy, why are car loans seriously delinquent, meaning 90 days, skyrocketing beyond belief? Why do we have credit cards skyrocketing beyond belief 90 days? The highest levels since 2011 when the unemployment rate was 9%, not 4%. Buy now, pay later, the newest thing. People are using it to pay for their groceries. If you got to use buy now, pay later for your eggs, is this a strong economy? And Roger, the most chilling fact of buy now, pay later is 43% of buy now, 43% are delinquent. If this is such a great economy, why are we seeing these numbers? It only points to one thing. It is not a great economy, and it's likely we're in a recession right now.
Yeah, and when you say buy now, pay later, you're not talking about credit card debt, correct?
That is correct. It is a different format where now you have these companies like Affirm. They allow you to do this buy now, pay later. It's 15% interest, so people are paying through the nose. And what you get for buy now, pay later is you get the ability to pay it over a year, let's just say. It's a short-term type of vehicle where you could pay over a year instead of spending right now. But if I got to spread my milk and eggs over a year, this is not good. This is not good. You have tens of millions of people using this. This is I believe that this is one of the last shoes to drop. This is, people are struggling, and this is what they're using to barely stay afloat in this particular economy that we have.
One of the issues here that I think is a real sleeper in this presidential campaign, Robert F. Kennedy has talked about it, the president has talked about it some, President Trump, and that is the lack of affordable housing. Whether you're buying or whether you're seeking to rent, this issue is being exacerbated by this influx of illegals. So to the extent that there is affordable housing or low-income housing available, it is in many cases going to those who aren't even American citizens. Many of the state laws require states to provide social services to illegals. So we have fiscal crises in cities, towns, counties across the country. But Joe Biden said in the debate yesterday that inflation is caused by corporate greed. Barry, what is causing our current inflation?
Oh my God. Well, okay, there's a lot there, and it's a wonderful question that you ask. So let's try and dissect it quickly because it's deep, but I want to try and make it in a way that people can understand this. So the Fed has kept rates high. We're in a restrictive policy, so it is choking the economy right now, making people suffer more. Pay more for your mortgage, pay more for borrowing money, pay more for your cars, making it much more difficult for people. Why is the Fed doing this? In an effort to choke inflation. However, the debt that we have, which is due to all the spending, those interest payments are now at a higher level. It is about to eclipse the fence because interest rates are high. So that is hurting us and causing more inflation in of itself. But when you measure inflation, what the Fed is looking at, the largest contributor, 43% of core CPI and 21% of core PCE, these are the Fed's favorite measures of inflation, the core PCE is, but CPI we look at too, is something called shelter. Now, shelter is not what you pay on your mortgage. It is rents and owner's equivalent rent. They don't use home prices in this index. Rents are continuously going up in a stubborn manner. If you looked at inflation right now is roughly 2.6% year over year. But that's in addition to all the inflation that we're paying. This is not going down. This is still going up, but it's only going up, giving you more pain by 2.6% on top of everything else. The Fed wants it at 2%. But if you looked at all aspects of inflation other than two items, motor vehicle insurance and shelter account for all but 0.2%. In other words, everything else has come down. But shelter, these rents, are what is propping it up, and motor vehicle insurance. It's stubborn because of theft, and it's stubborn because of all the technology and bumpers. So if you get an offender bender, it's very expensive because you got your park assist, your lane departure, all that stuff, your GPS and stuff like that. So if you don't have all these illegals coming in, driving up the demand for rent, you would have less inflation. So you could say it is two things. It is the border, and it is the spending, which is added to our debt. that is causing the inflation. Now, the Fed has culpability as well, because in 2021, what the Fed was doing is they kept interest rates and quantitative easing way too long. So the Fed has dirt on their hands as well. But really, it is the spending. It was the $1.9 trillion budget buster that was not needed that Joe Biden did with all those initiatives, the misnamed Inflation Reduction Act and the Build Back Better, all these things that have caused this inflation. It's the out of control spending that is what's causing the pain for the individuals. And by the way, one other thing is, so what he is doing is he's hurting the very contingency that he claims to try to be helping, the little guy. And he's the one that's hurting them. And it's all, and by the way, housing is being driven up from lack of supply and too much demand, even at these higher rates. So how does he fix it? More regulation, more pain for builders, higher interest rates so that supply remains constrained, pushing up prices. And then what is his solution? His solution is, let's exacerbate the problem and increase demand by giving out freebies and grants to people trying to buy a home. So what does that do? Increase the pricing. By the way, we saw this playbook in 2010 under Obama. He's taking the same mistake Obama made in 2010, where what Obama said is, here, we're going to give you a tax credit if you buy. Home prices shot up because too much demand. Then when the tax credit expired, home prices dropped, and those poor people that got the tax credit lost more money on their homes and fell victims to foreclosure. Joe Biden is right out of the same wrong playbook right now.
All right, folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Barry Habib, who is one of the country's most respected experts on the mortgage and housing market. He is the CEO of his company, MBS, and we'll be right back with more about this the economy and how it's going to be the deciding factor, I still believe, in this race. Don't touch that dial. Remember, you can always find us at WABCRadio.com worldwide. We'll be right back with more of Barry Habib of MBS Highway. Don't go away.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. We are the crown jewel of AM radio. We're talking to Barry Habib, the Chief Executive Officer of MBS Highway, entrepreneur, businessman, author of the Amazon bestseller Money in the Streets. Widely credited with saving the mortgage industry in 2020 from margin calls due to Federal Reserve actions. It was his presentation to the Fed that created stability at a critical time for America. So a man who's been in the room where it happens, as they say in Alexander Hamilton. Barry, I want to ask you this. Late last week, a group, I think it was 15, maybe it was 16, Nobel laureate economists came out and said that Donald Trump's prescription, his plan for the economy, would fire inflation. If inflation's already at 9%, how do you fire inflation when inflation's already been fired? And is this a replay of the 51 intelligence officers who insisted that Hunter Biden's laptop was definitely Russian disinformation? What do you make of this?
It seems like they get these coordinated efforts like you see right after the debate where they rally the troops and they put it out everywhere saying, Joe Biden might have stumbled, but you had Trump falsehoods. That was their key. But as you beautifully showed, maybe there's some exaggeration on both parts, but Joe Biden certainly had more than his share of exaggerated moments. Now, with respect to this, a couple of things. First, I just want to go back on one thing. There's a point I wanted to make, is that with the unemployment rate now at 4%, we're above the cycle low, which was 3.4 by 0.6%. That's an important economic distinction because every time in our history when that's happened, we are in a recession or within a recession by 2 months. So just that's something that you should bear in mind. I wanted to bring that up in the recession point, but that also ties in here because what I think Donald Trump is trying to do is saying what we've tried in the past isn't working. Let's try some other things. So would a tariff spur some additional ideas? That's the way brilliant breakthroughs occur, is when you have thinking out of the box. Clearly what we're doing is not working. So can we take a look at something like perhaps it's a VAT tax? We don't have a problem with revenue. We have a problem with spending. But if you're saying we want to increase revenue, well, instead of saying people should pay their fair share, why don't we say people should all pay a little bit? Why don't we broaden the tax base? That, in my opinion, is the issue. Because the top 1% that everybody likes to point to, if they were to get demonized the way they are continuously and they stop spending, you'd really seize up the economy. They pay 46% of the tax, top 1%. The bottom 50% pay less than 3% of the tax. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't help people. Of course you should. But perhaps a consumption tax like a VAT tax, perhaps tariffs. Maybe these are ways to say that we can broaden the tax base, look at other ways. And there's so much, by the way, Roger, that was made of the corporate tax breaks that were done. If you looked at the numbers, there's only about 7 or 8% of the overall revenue that comes from corporate taxes. And that was before the reduction in the tax rate. What we just did was made ourselves more competitive so we don't lose to foreign entities and that we don't lose jobs. We don't lose things going overseas. So there's a bigger play here rather than just demonizing and pointing fingers. You know, Donald Trump's trying to play chess where Joe Biden is the old playbook of playing checkers and pointing to things that just would buy votes. It's very disheartening as someone who understands these things to hear them do it. They're very clever and they're very bright on Joe Biden's side to point to these things because on the surface it has appeal until you understand the mechanics of it. And then you can see what Donald Trump is saying. Sure, on the surface, tariffs 10%. Maybe it seems like it could be something that's wild, but maybe it opens the door for ideas that can then grow from that.
Absolutely. Look, we saw this before. There's no question that the Reagan tax cuts caused a sharp increase in revenues, but the country's problems continued to be massive spending. These across-the-board tax cuts, Biden says Trump cut taxes on millionaires. No, Trump cut taxes on every American. A rising tide lifts all boats. All right, unfortunately, we are out of time. The brilliant Barry Habib, the CEO of MBS Highway. I love this part. Lead producer and managing partner of one of the longest running shows on Broadway, Rock of Ages, which made a movie star into Tom Cruise. Also a producer of Chris Angel's Mind Freak at Planet Hollywood in Vegas. A renaissance man of many, many, many talents. Barry Habib, God bless you, and thank you for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.
God bless you, my friend. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
All right, folks, we have jam-packed the show for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. We are very proud to be a member of the 77 WABC network family. There's great programming here, folks, whether it is Sid Rosenberg or my good friend Larry Kudlow, the architect of Donald Trump's, or I should say, the man who executed Donald Trump's vision for the most robust economy in American history prior to the pandemic, bouncing back nicely after the pandemic, or my good friend Frank Morano on the other side of midnight, Dominic Carter. There are so many great voices here. Curtis Sliwa. You don't want to miss any of it, folks. So please go directly to your app store, get the 77 WABC radio app so you don't miss all of it, and stand by for my good friend Joe Piscopo with Sundays with Sinatra.